Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. Last episode we talked about Fleur, an archetype that recently got support in Synchro Storm, and while it dips into the fusion pools elsewhere, was still in service to the synchro mechanic. But today's subject, Lyrilusc, is definitely in the wrong department. See, Lyrilusc was piloted in the Arc V anime by Lulu Obsidian, sister of Good Revolution boy Shay Obsidian, and that means... spoilers for fairly important Arc V plot points coming up, she's from the Xyz dimension. You know, a reality that's decidedly not synchro. And this is in a story where they're the second person to have multiple reincarnations across different extra deck themed universes, and you didn't pick the one that matches the theme of the pack you put together. They even have wind witches. Wind witches, why do you fail me so? But I've got to cover the set we have, not the set I want. While previously an archetype that piqued interest but little else, Lyrilusc have had something of a renaissance recently with the release of Tri-Brigade, and that was even before the Synchro Storm support was announced. Turns out the theme that uses yarded tri-types as material for big summons likes the deck that throws a bunch of material under an Xyz monster, cause they're all going to the grave eventually. So, to get a better understanding of these rising starlings in the competitive community, let's review the roost to see who's ready to fly, study their migration patterns to find out where they're going, then see if we can add any friends to their fearsome flock. It's time to find out how to be number one with Lyrilusc. But before we continue, a quick reminder to please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed my content so far. We're on the road to 100,000 subscribers, and what better way to travel down that road than on your Duel Runner? We'll be covering iconic 5Ds characters along the way, and our next stop is 20k, where we'll start the You Say Explained series, covering Stardust, Junk, and whatever other cards can help us rev it up! We've also got our Discord, where I don't have anything about it to advertise right now, but if you're watching the premiere right now, make sure to stick around for the stream right afterwards, because we're doing part 3 of Chat Writes and Explained video, and the invoked script is going pretty well. And a Twitter, where you can stay up to date on channel news and my bad takes. And if you really like what I do here, please consider joining my YouTube membership. It's basically like a Twitch sub, emotes included, or backing me on Patreon so you can get your name in the credits, as well as help determine future explained videos that I make. Thank you all so much for watching, and now, back to the video. So what's the deal with Lyriluscs? Well, they're a series of level 1 or rank 1 wind attribute winged beast type monsters that look like harpy ladies by way of black wings. Like, are they bird people? Are they people in bird suits? You know, if Dino Rufia and Inzektor have taught us anything, it's that you can be whatever type feels right. As far as gimmicks go, the theme is actually pretty standard for Xyz decks. The main deck monsters focus on assembling as much material as possible, several of which grant effects to the Xyz monsters you make, while your bosses are all about slowly chipping away at your opponent while keeping your field secure and your opponents troubled. Let's start with Turquoise Warbler. They have 100 attack and defense, and if you control no monsters, you can special summon them from your hand. And if special summoned from your hand by any means, including its own, you can special summon a Lyrilusc monster from your hand or grave. This is a great starter because not only can it help swarm monsters out of your hand in the early game, but also helps you recover another Lyrilusc in the late game. It's like the old saying goes, birds of a feather accrue massive amounts of card advantage that can be used to crush your opponent with together. Lyrilusc Cobalt Sparrow is a pretty neat monster to pair with them. They have 0 attack and 100 defense, and if special summoned, you can add a level 1 winged beast monster from your deck to your hand. And a wind Xyz monster that was summoned using this card on the field as material gains an effect that keeps your opponent from targeting it with card effects. So not only are we keeping our Xyz safe from the likes of Imperms and Dogmatica punishments, we're also getting another Lyrilusc from our deck to our hand. Or any other level 1 winged beast. Grab DD Crow for some grave hate, get Slower Swallow for an extra draw next turn, or as more Xyz material, or Nerval for the Tri-Brigade synergies. So when it comes to making your Xyz monsters, Cobalt makes for a good co-host. Lyrilusc Sapphire Swallow has 100 attack and 0 defense, and if you control a winged beast monster, you can special summon both this card and a level 1 winged beast from your hand. And a wind Xyz monster that's summoned using Sapphire Swallow on the field as material gains an effect that triggers on Xyz summon, which targets a Lyrilusc monster in your grave and attaches it to that Xyz monster as material. This is another good enabler for Cobalt Sparrow, and while it doesn't have any immediate effect on the board state, it does make your Xyz monsters even more terrifying. While it's always been nice to have more material on your Xyz monsters so they can keep using their effects, Lyriluscs in particular have a number of effects that care about the number of Xyz material they have. They're already pretty good, but with this card, they're gonna be Sapphire. Lyrilusc Barrel Canary has 0 attack and 200 defense, and if they're in your hand, you can target a Lyrilusc monster in your grave to special summon Canary and the targeted monster, but you can't special summon monsters from your extra deck for the rest of the turn except Xyz monsters. Darn, and we went so long without restricting the extra deck too. Oh well. If used as Xyz material for a wind monster while on the field, that Xyz monster gains an effect that boosts its own attack by 200, and also possession of it can't switch. That's an oddly specific effect to have, but it's better than nothing, especially if our opponent gets it in their head to play something like Triple Tactics Talent. Even the 200 attack boost, which would be paltry in any other strategy, is superb in ours, given one of the Xyz monsters we'll be talking about later. At first, it might seem like the effect has us over the barrel, but you can turn things around with a little canary-do attitude. Lyrilusc Celestine Wagtail has 200 attack and 0 defense, and if special summoned, you can add a Lyrilusc spell or trap from your deck to your hand, and boy, howdy do we have some fresh ones. Also, while in the grave, you can target a Lyrilusc Xyz monster you control and attach Wagtail to it as material. Another great monster to pair with Warbler, Swallow, and Canary. We can use this effect to grab a search card, a combat trick, or an on-theme Dark Ruler no more. And because nothing banishes Wagtail after using its second effect, you can keep equipping it to your Xyz monsters over and over again, which ain't anything to wag your finger at. That makes up our supporting cast, but before we move on to the core of our theme, we need to take a slight detour to Fusion Zone. Yeah, they've got that too, but not a synchro. I'm not mad. I've decided I am not mad. Lyrilusc Independent Nightingale has 1000 attack and 0 defense, requiring Assembled Nightingale, who we'll get into in a bit, as well as any Lyrilusc monster. If fusion summoned using an Xyz monster on the field whose original name included Lyrilusc, you can increase this card's level by the number of Xyz material those monsters had on the field. So if you use 2 Xyz monsters, you can check both monsters' materials. Independent Nightingale gains 500 attack times its level, is unaffected by other cards' effects, and once per turn, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to this card's level times 500. This seems wildly out of place. And it is, but that's because it has some anime significance. More spoilers coming up. Something called fusion parasites were being used to control the Rei Akiba reincarnations, and they're added to their decks, which ends up giving them a fusion monster per their controller's affiliation. But in Paper Yu-Gi-Oh!, are we ever going to use it? Well, maybe. I mean, not for nothing, but you can do some serious damage with this effect, easily getting at least 2k. But unfortunately, with Barrel Canary locking out our non-Xyz summons from the extra deck, you could say that your ability to summon Nightingale is quite dependent on if you use Canary. Okay, time to get back on track. Let's talk about our Xyz monsters. They're all rank 1, require 2 or more level 1 monsters as material, and have 0 attack and defense. Lyrilusc Assembled Nightingale gains 200 attack for each Xyz material attached to it, can attack directly, and while attached with material, can attack a number of times each turn up to the number of materials attached to them. And if that wasn't enough, once per turn as a quick effect, you can detach a material, and until the end of the turn, all Lyrilusc monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle or card effect, and you take no battle damage. Holy smokes, that can get out of hand really quickly. Sure, only 2 material means 800, but 3 makes 1800, 4 makes 3200, and 5 means 5000. Get it up to 7, and that's an OTK. Eat your heart out, Ghost Trick Angel of Mischief. Sure, that's more material than you can actually put on board at once, but between all these Swallow and Wagtail effects adding more material after the summon, Barrel essentially acting as 2 material with their attack boost, and some of the most comprehensive protection I've seen given to a field of monsters, and you've got a card that's really good at assembling lethal. Lyrilusc Recital Starling has an effect when Xyz summoned, where you can target a face-up monster on the field and it gains a permanent 300 attack and defense boost for each material attached to Starling. And once per turn, they can detach a material to add a level 1 winged beast monster from your deck to your hand. And all battle damage you take in battles involving this Xyz summoned card is also inflicted to your opponent. What is going on with their effects? They're so good! Okay, let me break it down. If you manage to make Starling after Nightingale, you can give their on-summon attack bonus to our multi-attacking direct attacker, thus lowering the amount of materials needed to reach their critical OTK threshold, acts as another Lyrilusc searcher to help extend your combos, and if Nightingale somehow doesn't do enough damage, you can crash Starling into an opponent's monster to try and clear out the rest of their life points. Nightingale may not be the brawn, but this monster here really is the star of the show. Lyrilusc Promenade Thrush gains 500 attack for each material attached to it, and once per turn, you can detach a material to target a spell or trap your opponent controls and shuffle it into their deck. And at the start of the damage step, if another monster you control battles, you can detach any number of materials from Thrush to have that monster you control gain 300 attack for each material detached until the end of the turn. Important wording there, because since it lasts until the end of the turn, it can also help to multiply the power of Nightingale. It's probably the least bombastic of the crew, but it is back row removal in the extra deck or face-up cards that have made themselves more prominent. Lyrilusc Ensemble Robin gains 500 attack for each material attached to it, and if your opponent special summons any number of monsters except during the damage step, you can detach a material to target one of those monsters and return it to the hand. And that's not a once per turn effect, so as long as you have material to feed it, you can keep bouncing. Also, if this card in your possession is sent to the grave by an opponent's card, you can target another Lyrilusc monster in your grave and add it to your hand. This is one of the biggest advancements in the archetype. Until now, Lyrilusc players going first had to make do with a copy of Kikinagashi Fucho to hold down the fort. But now you can actually interrupt your opponent right where it hurts, the special summons. They aren't going to be winning any games for you by taking away your opponent's life points, but like many things in life, teamwork is the key, and there's no better way to get there than by this ensemble performance. But if that wasn't enough, we've got some excellent support cards that'll help us fly to even greater heights. Lyrilusc Bird Call is a normal spell that takes a Lyrilusc monster from your deck, and you can either add it to your hand or send it to the grave. Then you can special summon a Lyrilusc monster with a different name from your hand. I'm sorry, what? Okay, yeah, sure. Just do everything, why don't you? The full power of this card is going to depend on whatever Lyrilusc you already have in hand, since you can't use whichever one you searched. But this radically increases the power of Sparrow, since you don't need to worry about having the right monster to pair with it to get their special summon, and you can use it on Warbler to get their effect, even if you have monsters on board. Even sending that monster to the grave is a viable option, because it sets them up to be summoned by Canary, or sets up Wagtail to be attached to one of your Xyz monsters. Yeah, I'm calling it now. This deck is busted. Lyrilusc Bird Strike is a normal spell that you can activate if you control a Lyrilusc monster, and it negates the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls until the end of the turn. Okay, so calling it a Dark Ruler no more was a bit much since it can be responded to, but not by much. And in this case, you get to do all the battle damage you normally would have been able to. And it's searchable by Wagtail. Why is no one talking about this? Oh, because it's not gonna come out until the Animation Chronicle cards get imported. Right. This is awkward. Yeah, I moved to strike this from the record. I don't want anyone seeing this. Lyrilusc Bird Sanctuary is a continuous spell that lets you target 2 winged beast Xyz monsters you control and attach one of them to the other as material, and it transfers over all the material the attached one had as well. Holy cow! At that point, you don't even have to crash into anything with Starling. You can just tuck him under Nightingale and go to town. Looks like getting to that critical OTK amount isn't going to be that hard. Also, if you control any Xyz monster with 3 or more material, you can draw a card. Yeah, just add a cantrip effect to it. That'll draw you even more cards if it sticks around long enough to get the effect again. Or rather, if you let your opponent live that long. Sorry folks, you may not like it, but this is what Beak Performance looks like. Our last card is Lyrilusc Phantom Feathers, a normal trap that has you targeting a Lyrilusc monster you control. On resolution, all monsters your opponent currently control have their attack permanently changed to match the Lyrilusc you targeted, as well as changing their levels and ranks to 1. And when an opponent's monster declares an attack on one of your Lyrilusc monsters, you can banish Phantom Feathers from your grave, and the monster targeted for that attack has their attack stat changed to match that opponent's monsters until the end of the turn, which is super fortunate if you have Nightingale on board to make it so you can't be destroyed by battle. This one's probably the most gimmicky one of the bunch, but I've got to admit, the idea of zeroing out your opponent's field by targeting Barrel Canary is immensely funny, even if its utility isn't entirely on the level. Okay, so that's all the Lyrilusc cards, but what do we do with them? Well, on paper, we'll OTK our opponent by smashing them with Nightingale as many times as we need to. But we've got a whole choir of options to choose from, so we aren't going to be so one-note. With the help of supplemental cards, as well as some of our own, I'm looking at you, Ensemble, we can actually stun our opponent as well, keeping them on the back foot long enough to bring that one-turn kill together. But what can we play to help them out? Lyrilusc are poised to take advantage of some of the Xyz pool's best cards. Sure, you could use Sanctuary to make an absolutely towering Nightingale, but you could also fold those rank 1s into Utopic Future, which can then become Utopic Dragon Future. Negating monster effects and stealing them is silly, but if you need some interruption after going second, then you can make an absolutely demoralizing AA Zeus. Like Borbo before it, Nightingale just doesn't care about your opponent's monster lineup, so you carve out a ton of damage, stack even more material onto it with Sanctuary if you want, then stack Zeus on top of all that, and dare your opponent to commit to a board. Getting at least 2 activations will be easy, with the possibility of 3 or even 4 not being too outlandish. For more ways to smooth out your plays, you can use Jester Confit as a free level 1 to get things going if you're short just a single monster, where Arfthou comes with a hefty life point penalty, but it'll be worth it to unleash your full power. And Link Haribo can be made before you lock out links with Barrel Canary, that way Ensemble can't just get run over by a normal summon. As for a silly tech pick, Instant Fusion. It's got the same utility as Jester Confit, and we'll be using it to summon Independent Nightingale, as it doesn't have any kind of restriction that keeps you from doing so. It doesn't do much more than Jester, but it does dome your opponent for an extra 500 damage, which is pretty nice. And that's all I've got to say about Lyrilusc. We're in for a heck of a format where people can stack tiny birds on top of each other to pilot giant robots with an unreasonable amount of consistency, and honestly, I'm here for it. They're fast, they're furious, and are ready to bring the smack down. But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Do you agree that Lyrilusc are very talented, or is 1 in the hand even worth 2 in the deck? Let me know in the comments, and if you haven't already, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video around. It really does a lot to help me out. And if you want to be a big part in funding my quest to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, I'd be so grateful if you could check out my YouTube membership and Patreon links in the description to see if you'd like anything they have on offer. In fact, I'd like to take this time to thank my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commander, CozyBoat275, Nebula Navigators, Benjamin Meisner, Genesis Yu-Gi-Oh, Gloomba331, Jared C, Maven, Panther J, Shooting Star 3300, The Wizard Moose and the Fresh Prince of Conair, Cosmic Crusaders, Bear Sharktopus Studios, Chaz Ghost, Colin Todd and the Legendary Raven, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. And if you want to see another video full of feathered friends, check out this video I did on Raid Raptors. Or if you want to see me throw down some face downs against another Yu-Gi tuber, check out this playlist for my Progression Polls series. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.